Mishnah, Berakhot, chapter 5. This is our second session of the discussion of Masechet Berakhot. We are in the second chapter, and this chapter, chapter 5, and chapter 5 by itself, speaks about the Tefillah Ba'amidah. The first Mishnah, En omdim litpalel ela mitoch koved rosh. One should pray only when he is ready, when he is serious and focused, which is clearly necessary. The pious people of the previous generations would prepare for a whole hour before the tefillah in order to have the proper kavanah, the proper intention. The Mishnah says that even if the king comes to a person who's reading the Amidah and greets him, that person should not answer. And even if a snake is coiled around your ankle, you should not stop, which seems like an exaggeration. Who can really do that? When, let's say that we can understand not talking to the king, not answering back to the king, and then when you finish the Amidah, you say you have to explain, I was doing this religious ritual, etc. It's beautiful, and maybe the king will understand it, maybe he will not. But how can one be in that level of meditation not to respond to a snake crawling on your body? Remember that we mentioned when we spoke about Berakhot HaShahar, most people used to walk barefoot. We know that the instinctive reaction of people to serpents, to bugs, or anything crawling that touches our skin is to recoil and to jump back. How can one not do that? Now the Gemara qualifies it. The Gemara raised this question. Really, what if are you putting yourself in danger? Do you say that you should die in order to say the Amidah? And the Gemara answers that when we speak about the king, it only refers to the king of Israel, but not to Malchei Umot Ha'olam, not to non-Jewish kings, and because those kings are bound to execute the person if he doesn't greet them back. And when we speak about the serpent, it means that it refers to a non-poisonous, non-lethal serpent. But if you know it's a deadly serpent or a scorpion, you have to stop, because otherwise your life is going to be in danger. So on that, several problems. It's not written in the Mishnah. The Mishnah does not make this distinction. When the Mishnah says in a clear-cut manner, even if the king asks, speaks to you, you don't answer, it doesn't give any allowances. All kings. Same with the snake. The Mishnah doesn't say if it's a deadly snake or a non-deadly snake. That's number one. Number two, the Mishnah was written under the reign of Jewish kings. Until the year 70, there was still only Jewish kings, and after that there were no Jewish kings. So it's either or. So if we speak about the king, you must clarify which king you are talking about. Is it a Jewish or not Jewish king? Not leave it in ambiguity. Same thing when we talk about a snake. How does one distinguish between a poisonous and a non-poisonous one? It's not very easy. I remember when I was in 7th, 8th grade with a friend who was an expert on snakes. We had a terrarium in school, and we used to feed and take care of several. There were several snakes there. One of my friends, tutored by the expert, turned a stone and found a snake. He picked it up and bring it to the expert, who freaked out. He said, "This snake is extremely poisonous." It happened to be that there are two snakes in the mountains of Yerushalayim. One is called Za'aman Zetani. It's from the rattlesnake family, and is not deadly, is not poisonous. The other one is Tsefa, a viper, which is deadly. So when you're in tefillah, you're not going to look at your foot and say, "Oh, I don't think. Let me examine the shape of the head. Does it have a little horns coming out that is the sign of the Tsefa or not?" No, you're just going to shake it off. So what is the Mishnah really telling us? So, like I said, the problem with this interpretation of the Gemara in the Mishnah is that we don't have the distinction made in the Mishnah, and the distinction is not really logical. It's not something that could be applicable. So it seems that this statement is not halakha, and Indeed, one of the early commentators in the Mishnah says that it refers to the previous phrase in the Mishnah. If you see here, Hasidim Arishonim hayu shoyim sha'a achat u'mitpalim kedei sheyichavnu et hamakom. We talked here about the mythical sect called Hasidim Arishonim, the early pious people. Maybe there were 2 of them, maybe 3, maybe 10. Definitely not the majority. Definitely not something that was taught as halakha. And they say those people who would prepare themselves for an hour before praying, they, even if the king would talk to them, they wouldn't answer. Even if a snake would be coiled on his ankle, they wouldn't stop. Would it be possible? Did it happen that someone died because of that? Maybe. But that, as we'll see later, that's another thing that has evolved within halakha, where at a certain point, the idea that one must preserve his life at all costs, even if it means transgressing some of the mitzvot, that idea did not exist until the time of the Maccabees, and it evolved only later on. So it is possible that when we talk about Hasidim Arishonim, that yes, there were people who were willing to pray to death, even if this will happen to them, but this is not recommended as halakha. That's Mishnah Aleph. In Mishnah Bet, we see that even with the names of Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Eliezer, those are Amoraim, Tanaim, who lived in the 2nd century. Even at that time, the Amidah is still in a state of influx. It's not clear when you say certain things. Mazkirim gvurot kshamim b'tchiat hametim v'shoalim kshamim b'virkat hashanim. Like we say today, we mention the rain in the second bracha. We ask for the rain in the birkat hashanim, the blessing of the years. But Havdalah, where do you say Havdalah? The Mishnah says that you say Havdalah behoren ada'at, as we do today. It's part of the 4th bracha. Rabbi Akiva Omer bracha revi'it b'fnei atzma, but according to Rabbi Akiva, you add it as a separate bracha, and according to Rabbi Eliezer, it's in the penultimate bracha, that of Modim. So, just a fact, by looking at this Mishnah, we know that around the year 130, the time of the Bar Kokhba revolt when Rabbi Akiva died, there was still a doubt regarding the exact location of the Havdalah in the Amidah. It's still not fully established. Mishnah Gimel HaOmer Al kan tzipor yagi'u rachamecha ve'al tov yizacher shemecha modim משתקין אותו. העובר לפני הטבע וטעה יעבור אחריו ולא יעבור אחר תחתיו ולא יהיה סרבן באותה שעה. מניין הוא מתחיל? בתחילת הברכה שטעה בה. The one who says, may you have mercy on the bird's nest, or on the nesting bird, and may we remind or mention your name over good things, or if you say we thank you, meshatkin oto, he is being told to keep quiet. That is another example of the tefillah in flux. We don't have yet a clear nusach, text that everybody uses. Maybe the Amidah is known, maybe the Shema. Obviously, biblical pieces are known better than the new introduction of the rabbis. But if one wants to be creative and add new ideas, new text to the tefillah, we say that's where we draw the line. Why is there concern about that statement? You have mercy on us as you had mercy on the nesting bird. Maybe because that was a reaction to the destruction, that people said, how can God do this to us if the Torah says that one cannot take the bird with the fledglings, he must take care of either the fledglings or the bird. So how could God do this to us? My great-grandfather, Rabbi Yehuda Fetaya, actually used it in his poem, Zechut Rachel. I have another discussion on that specific one. But in his rendition of Zechut Rachel, he describes how Rachel comes and talks to God and says, how could you do this to me? Velama shilachta ha'em miken velo lakachta habanim. Why did you drive the mother away without taking the sons to yourself? Even though in the original mitzvah of the Torah, taking the fledglings or the eggs is for one's consumption, but within this context of post-destruction theology, people were bringing those accusations as if it were against God, saying, how can God show us in the Torah such mercy towards animals, and meanwhile deal with us with such cruelty? So the rabbis did not want that kind of heresy to be heard, and they said this person should be silenced. Same for one who says, Al tov yizacher shemecha, we will thank you for the good you have given us. That was in a period where evil was so prevalent and was so much in control of everything else that the rabbis felt that this is not good for people to hear, and they would not let the person say that. Finally, modim meshatkim oto, one who says, we thank you, also is being silenced. The Gemara explains, because it seems that he worships two authorities or two entities, and that is also recorded as the sin of heresy committed by Elisha ben Avuya. Elisha was one of the 4 people who went into the orchard of mysticism, and at a certain point he says, Shtei rashuyotim, I think that there are 2 deities. That is the worldview of Gnosticism. The Gnostics believe that there is that God created the world, but that creator retired to a place which is incomprehensible by us. We cannot communicate with that creator, and instead the world is run by an entity called the Demiurgus, who is in charge of the world. Later on in Kabbalah, this whole idea has been transformed to the issue of the Sefirot, the Keter and Sof, which is inaccessible. But back then, this is just the grain of the idea. Maybe people did say Modim because they started believing in the God of good and the God of evil, and because of that problem, the rabbis also changed the verse from Yeshayahu. And it says they incorporated into Tefillah Oseh Shalom Uvoreh Ra, so they added it to Tefillah in order to teach people that God creates both good and evil, but they modified the pasuk to read Oseh Shalom Uvoreh Takol. However, important to know that we are talking about a period where people would still add their own stuff to the tefillah, and the rabbis had to legislate regarding that. If one is the Hazan, called here Over Lifnei Teva, and he made a mistake, we should let someone else should continue, and that other person should not refuse to go up, because usually one should refuse to show politeness. They say this is not a time to be polite, just go up and continue the Amidah from the same place where the other person made a mistake. The Talmud explains on that this applies to all blessings except for Birkat Aminim, the blessing that shuns the heretics. And when this Mishnah was written, the Berakhot did not exist yet. The Berakhot was written specifically to filter out Christians from Jews, because early Christians looked exactly like observant Jews. They lived the lifestyle of observant Jews. They did not accept any converts. You had to be a born Jew in order to be a Christian. The only difference is that they believed that Jesus was the Messiah and that redemption is already there. So when they would come into the synagogue, maybe they would talk to people, but in general, the rabbis felt uncomfortable that they have people that they consider heretics praying with them. So in order to filter them out, they created a blessing that is actually a curse that shuns and degrades the heretics. So a new Christian would not be able to stand or to stay in the synagogue and hear those kind of blasphemies against him being said. The only way that he could override that was to try to be himself the cantor and then skip the blessing. And that, for that reason, the Gemara says that if a person made a mistake in any other bracha, he could be a hazan in another occasion. But if his mistake was in Birkat Aminim, that he missed that bracha, he can never be a hazan again, because now we labeled him as a non-Jew or a heretic. However, again, the conclusion here, we are talking about a period where this bracha is not yet part of the Amidah. Otherwise, the exception would have been mentioned in the Mishnah. Mishnah Dalet speaks about the case of one Kohen only. I'm not going to get into that. In Mishnah Hey, the last Mishnah of the chapter, speaks about one who prayed and was confused during the tefillah. He wasn't able to recite the tefillah correctly. That actually is more an agadic material. It's not a halacha. You cannot legislate the feeling of whether you're tefillah is accepted or not. So this is an agadic part, and we could say that it seals Masechet Berakhot, at least part A, which was Kriyat Shema and Amidah. And from here, we're going to continue to the second part of the Masechet, of the tractate, which deals with special blessings. So, what the Mishnah says here, Mishnah Hey, מתפלל וטעה, סימן רע לו. If one made a mistake in his silent Amidah, it's a bad omen for him. ואם שליח ציבור, סימן רע לשולחיו מפני ששלוחו של אדם כמותו. And if he's the cantor, someone who represents the community, it's a bad omen for for the people who appointed him. And they said about Rabbi Haim ben Dosa, that they say about this rabbi, Rabbi Haim ben Dosa, that he used to pray for the sick and would say, this one is going to live, this one is going to die. They asked him, how do you know? He said, if I pray fluently without confusion, I know that he's going to live, and if not, I know Shu Metoraf, I know that he's doomed. And that's a very interesting perspective, where it's not that tefillah that influences reality, but rather reality that dictates tefillah. So in a sense, we have here an idea that says that our prayer does not really affect the situation of someone's illness. But the Gemara doesn't elaborate on that. That is described as something exceptional, maybe something that happened only to Rabbi Haim ben Dosa. But in general, this chapter ends with Divrei Agadah, and because of that, we could say that it seals an ancient file of Mishnah. Maybe that file was called prayers, a daily service, whatever it is. It's not connecting to the next chapter, chapter 6, which speaks about the special blessings for food before and after. Chapter 6 speaks about the blessings. Starts with the blessings famous, known by all, the Berakhot called Berakhot HaNehenin. If we ask anyone today, what are the Berakhot that we say for food? They would say we have mezonot, etz, adama, she'akol, and then two other special Berakhot, borei pri hagefen, and hamotzi. But so mezonot for non-bread items, cookies, cakes, etc., pasta. Borei pri ha'etz for fruits, borei pri ha'adama for vegetables, she'akol for all others, and borei pri hagefen for wine, motzi lechem min haaretz for bread. But let's look at the Mishnah. Ketzad mevachim al ha'pirot, Mishnah Aleph, the first Mishnah of the 6th chapter of Berakhot. Ketzad mevachim al ha'pirot, al pirot ha'ilan, omer borei pri ha'etz. חוץ מן היין, שעל היין אומר פורה פרי הגפן. On the fruits of the tree, one says בורא פרי העץ, except for wine. For wine, you say בורא פרי הגפן. על פירות הארץ אומר בורא פרי האדמה, חוץ מן הפת, שעל הפת אומר מוציא לחם מן הארץ. On the fruits of the land, one says בורא פרי האדמה, except for bread. For the bread, you say המוציא לחם מן הארץ, ועל הירקות אומר בורא פרי אדמה. On vegetables, you say, for vegetables, you say, Borei Pri Adama. rabbi-ovadia says, Borei Minei Deshaim. He who created different types of herbs or grass. So what is most strikingly missing from here is Birkat Borei Minei Mezonot, the one we say today for cakes, cookies, pasta, etc. And not only that, let's look back carefully and see how does the Mishnah understand the fruits of the tree. It says, for fruits of the tree, you say borei pri ha'etz, except for wine. But wine is juice. It's basically grape juice. Why would I think of wine as being borei pri ha'etz? If wine has a special status as a liquid, it would be a special status compared to juice. No one says, there are some poskim who do say that for orange juice you have to say borei pri ha'etz, but the common practice today is to say for all juices, shehakol. we think of all liquids, all drinks as she'akol except for wine. But wine in the Mishnah is not the exception of liquids, it's the exception of fruits, meaning that by the terminology of the Mishnah, everything that comes from the tree, the blessing for it will be borei pri'ayetz. Coffee, because the beans grow on trees, borei pri'ayetz. Cocoa, chocolate, borei pri'ayetz. Anything mashed, juiced, cooked, beaten, doesn't matter how you eat it or drink it, you will say borei pri'ayetz, except for wine. And the same thing goes for the product of the earth, because the Mishnah says borei al perot haaretz, omer borei peri adama, for the fruit of the land or the ground. One says borei peri adama. Now in this Mishnah, there's a distinction between perot and yirakot. There's perot haaretz and yirakot, the fruit of the land, and yirakot, vegetables. So yirakot will be what we call green vegetables, and that's why Rabbi-ovadia says that the bracha for them is borei mini deshaim, herbs or grass. And perot haaretz would be any other fruit that grows from the land, like tomatoes, maybe even something like cucumbers or squash, zucchini. That family would be considered by them fruits, peppers. For those you say borei peri adama, chutz min hapat, except for bread. For bread you say hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Here again, we ask the same question: what is pat? What is bread compared to? What is it an exception of? We would have thought that the bread is an exception of mezonot. Unlike mezonot, that the dough is sweet or has chocolate in it, or baked or fried or flattened in a different way, it's not exactly like bread. For all these you say mezonot, except for bread. For the bread you say hamotzi lechem min haaretz. But that's how the Mishnah says. The Mishnah says that for the fruit of the land you say borei peri adama. So if, for example, you took wheat and you ground it and you baked something other than bread from it, you would say for it borei peri adama. If you popped corn into popcorn, or if you made oil from it, and let's say you drink you put oil, maybe after you drink it for as a remedy, just oil, you will say borei peri adama and not borei pri'ayetz, and not she'akol. So and there's no bracha or as mezonot. The bracha of mezonot that today is so contentious. There are volumes written about the status of different types of baked doughs, whether they are mezonot or hamotzi lechem, is not even mentioned in the Mishnah. The Mishnah had a very simple division. Borei pri'ayetz is said for everything that is derived from the tree, and borei peri adama for everything that is derived from the earth. The exception is borei peri gefen and hamotzi lechem min haaretz. So that is important to keep in mind, because we think automatically that the division into Eretz, Adama, Mezonot, She'akol is a Mishnaic one, is from the time of the Mishnah. Here we see that it's not even mentioned in the Mishnah. In Mishnah Bet we read Berakh al perot ha'elan borei peri adama yatsa, v'al perot ha'aretz borei pri'ayetz lo yatsa. Al kulam yomar she'akol niya b'dvaro yatsa. That's the halacha that says that the more broad the bracha is, it includes more. So she'akol, meaning that everything was created in God's word, is a much more broadly defined bracha, and it covers for everything, even for fruits and vegetables. Whereas borei peri adama, that covers for vegetables, can cover for fruits as well, but not for other things that are she'akol. And the fruits of the tree are a very specific blessing. Nothing else but fruits of the tree is included there. In Mishnah Gimel, we speak about things that do not come from the land, al davar she'en gidulo min haaretz, which is basically meat, beef, fish, cheese, etc. But there are also other things, ala hometz v'ala novlot v'ala govai, omer she'akol, things that came because of not desired situation. For example, vinegar. Vinegar, unlike today, vinegar was in the past made only when wine went bad. When wine became rotten, people would not want to waste it, so they make it into vinegar. So they said, you say, even though it's wine, it's a product of wine, you don't say borei peri gefen for it, because it's not something that causes you joy. It came because of that something went wrong, and for that you say shakol. It's shakol in that sense is understood as the acceptance of the divine decree. I accept everything that the God does. Similarly, for the govai, which is a type of grasshopper or locust, this is not something that we're happy with. People used to eat it in the past, but they were not happy with the fact that their crops were completely devastated. So the Mishnah says you say shakol for it. Same for milk, cheese, and eggs. Rabbi Yehuda says kol shehu min kelala en mevarchin alav. Anything that came through a negative turnout or happening, you don't say beracha at all. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, when one eats locust or uses vinegar, he does not say beracha for them. In Mishnah Dalet, היו לפניו מינים הרבה. רבי יהודה אומר, אם יש ביניהם ממין שבעה, מברך עליו, וחכמים אומרים, מברך על איזה מהם שירצה. This Mishnah is extremely interesting because it speaks about the priority of Berakhot. What if you have a variety of fruits, vegetables, other things in front of you? How do you go about the Berakhot? What is the Berakhot that you say first? So Rabbi Yehuda says, if there is one of the 7 species, you say the Berakhot for it. But the rabbis say, choose whatever you want, and that's what you eat. Today, the halakha is established, and more than 1,000 years of this Mishnah is in existence. The halakha is established that there's a priority. First, you start with fruits of the 7 species. But whereas even according to Rabbi Yehuda, who said that there is a hierarchy and that you have to start eating the fruits of the 7 species, it doesn't say in what order, but the practice now is based on the Gemara to deal with those fruits by their proximity to the word eretz, because in the pasuk it says eretz chita us'ora v'gefen utena v'rimon eretz et shemen udvash, the land of wheat and barley, olive oil, the eretz et shemen udvash, olives which produce oil, and dates which produce honey. V'gefen utena v'rimon eretz et shemen udvash. First, gefen, tena v'rimon, grapes, figs, and pomegranate, and then eretz et shemen udvash, the land of olives and dates. So they say by the proximity to the word aretz, the olive is mentioned immediately after the word aretz, then dates, then when we go back to the first group, gefen is the third, grapes is the third from the word aretz, tena is second, and one is third. So the order if you have those fruits in front of you, the first one to say the blessing for, if you want to say, it will be olives, then dates, then grapes, figs, and pomegranate. And the rabbi said, no, you could say bracha for whatever you want. And this has also been retained in halakha, where the rabbis say, when we say that you say a blessing for the more important fruit of the 7 species, that is if you have no preferences, but if you have preferences, you go for that. In reality, most people would go with the priority, the hierarchy as established in the Talmud, and will say, now that the priority is established, this is the one I want. But this really came out of hand to the extent that when in the Frum, the Orthodox world, people go on shidduchim, so they go on dates. One of the things that the shadchan, the matchmaker, does is place a plate with fruits and snacks and vegetables, and see which beracha is being said first by the boy and the girl, by the future bride and groom. They even used to do that test to rabbis who were about to get semicha to see what the beracha they say first. And all that has evolved from a simple mahalok in the Mishnah, where Rabbi Yehuda says, go with one of the 7 species. Rabbi said, do whatever you want. Mishnah Vav are important because they speak about the practices during the meal that we do not do today. And they also have application to the practices of Pesach, because in this Mishnah, in its equivalent in the Tosefta, we see how people used to eat in the time of the Mishnah. And here's what we read: Berakhot shelifnei Hamazon patar et hayayin shel achar Hamazon. When one says a blessing for the wine before Birkat Hamazon, before the food, patar et hayayin shel achar Hamazon. He doesn't have to say bracha for the wine which will be served after the meal. So, if you think of a meal during Shabbat, so yeah, we know that we have a cup before the meal, kiddush, and sometimes if you have 10 people say the zimun Birkat Hamazon with 10. Other people say that you always have to say Birkat Hamazon with a cup of wine. But the Mishnah does not speak about Shabbat. It speaks in general, the wine before the food, the wine after the food. And then it speaks about Berech ala parperet shelifnei Hamazon, patar et parperet shelachar Hamazon. If one said bracha for the dessert or the appetizer before the meal, he doesn't have to say bracha for the appetizer after the meal. Berech ala pat, patar et parperet, ala parperet lo patar et pat. If one said a blessing on bread, the side dishes are included in that. But if one said a bracha for the side dishes, even if they are borei pri adama, which bread potentially is part of, it does not cover for that. Bet Shammai omrim af lo ma'aseh gedera. Bet Shammai say, the students of the house of Shammai say that saying bracha for a side dish, parperet, which could be sauces or salads or vegetables, does not cover for cooked food. So they separate categories within the meal. But the interesting thing here is that we see that in every meal, wine will be served before the meal and after the meal. So it's the appetizer and the aperitif. And also parperet, the way people ate, they had some kind of dessert or appetizer before and dessert afterwards. And the rules were not still established as to when to say Birkat Hamazon to cover for all. But in the moment we'll go to the Tosefta to see the expanded version of this Mishnah, because as I said, it's important to the understanding of Hechot Pesach. Hayu yoshvin le'echol. This is Mishnah Vav. When if people sit down to eat, each one of them says a bracha on his own. But if they are inclined or reclined, one person says the bracha for all. Here also we see that regularly they had two ways of eating, either sitting or lying down. And that determines the bracha. If they sit down, each one says bracha separately, because that means that they're not planning to eat with each other, just happen to sit around one table. But if they are reclined, that means that they are planning of having a meal together. In that case, they have to say bracha together. And when we say Haim Ovadia lekulan, one person says the bracha the way we do today on Shabbat. The one person says Hamutzi covers for all. If they were served the wine during the meal, each one of them says bracha for himself, because it seems that each one is focused on his own meal. Le'achar Hamazon, but if it's after the meal, one says bracha for all. Vehu omer ala mugmar. He also says the blessing ala mugmar. Mugmar is from the Aramaic word gumra, which means coals. They would bring at the end of the meal red hot coals, and spread on them incense for good fragrance, and they would say bracha on it. And so the honor of saying this bracha was given to the person who does who says the bracha for the wine at the end of the meal. Even though this mugmar is brought after the meal, and it could have seemed a separate issue, it is not. Now, it's interesting to note that there is a custom today among some Sephardic communities that whenever there's an official kiddush as a ritual, after you say borei pri gefen, there's besamim. You say borei mine besamim, that is a wedding and a brit milah, and maybe that is the source. But let us look for a second in the Tosefta and see how the Tosefta writes that. So when we look in the Tosefta, this is in chapter 4, Halacha Het, Kitzat Seder Se'udam, The way to have a meal is to have the guests come in and sit on benches and on chairs until everyone is accounted for. And once they are all there, they bring water to wash their hands. They only wash one hand. When they serve wine, each one says his own individual blessing. And then when they bring brought dessert, each one says a personal blessing. Now they go up and they recline, and they're being brought water to wash their hands. And now, even though they already washed one hand, now they wash both hands, and they serve them a cup. Even though they say a blessing for the first one, they say a blessing for the second one. They bring dessert, even though they already had dessert. Now they bring more or appetizer. One can say the bracha for all. If one came after 3 rounds of dessert or appetizer or doof were served, he's not allowed to go in anymore. And Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel adds to that in Yerushalayim the custom was to hang a towel or a sheet over the door. As long as the sheet is there, it's an invitation to come in. But once it's removed, you're not allowed to come in. We have to. All these Mishnah should be understood in the context of the festive meal in the time of the Mishnah. First of all, we have to remember that at the time they had no means of refrigeration or preserving the food other than make it really salty. What's called maliyah. And for that reason, when you had a meal, a festive event, you wanted to make sure that everybody's accounted for and you know how many people you have to prepare food for. That's when you go and you do shechita and prepare the animal and the meat for the meal, maybe other things, but the meat was the main staple. So it's a whole procession, and there were rules for it, mostly picked up from the Greeks. And what the Mishnah tells us that the first round was just gathering the guests. They all come in, they sit on benches, they sit on chairs, they don't eat yet. After all the guests that the host anticipates are there, they wash hands, but they only wash one hand. Why? Because they're about to eat the parperet, which is dips. They dip vegetables in vinegar and they eat them. And then, after they only wash one hand, then they go up to the upper room where they had the recliners, and that's where we have the word clinic is from there to be reclined. In Hebrew, the word traklin, which means a social hall, is from triklinium, 3 reclining beds, which usually people would sit in 3s. But when they go into that hall and they recline, that is considered in the official meal. Now they wash both hands because they're about to eat bread. They have to say the bracha for the wine again and the parperet again, and they keep on doing that until the point where the host announces officially, no more guests are coming in. Now we know how many people are here and the food is going to be served. If we compare that to the laws of Pesach, we'll do that when we get to Pesach, but you realize that the dipping of celery in salt water was not a surprise to people who lived in the time of the Mishnah, because they always dipped food before the meal. So the original question in the Mishnah regarding the act of tibul, of dipping the celery or the maror, was shebechol alelot en anu metaberin ela pam ahad v'layla zeh shtei pamim. All other nights we only dip once, and this night we dipped twice. And the Gemara says this doesn't make sense. What, do you have to dip every night? We don't. So we changed the nusach of the Haggadah to read, all other nights we don't dip even once. Tonight we dip twice. But this is a problem because like the Gemara says, in modern time we do dip. So should we change the bracha back? The answer is that the seder was built along the process of the festive meal of the time. It has to do with the Greek and Roman table manners, but we'll deal with it more when we get to Pesach. We're going back to end Mishnah Perek Vav today. Mishnah Zayin. הביאו לפניו מליח בתחילה ופת עמו, מברך על המליח ופותר את הפת, שהפת תפלה לו. זה הכלל, כל שהוא עיקר ועמו תפלה, מברך על העיקר ופותר את התפלה. So, the Mishnah says, if one was brought maliach, which means, some say it means salted fish, it could be also salted meat, which is called beef jerky. It was common at the time to do that in order to preserve the meat for a long period. In the Moroccan community, it was done until today that salted meat was called chlea, and you could just take a piece of it and eat it anytime you want, but you needed to break the salt, the power of the salt in that salted fish or beef, and you would eat it with bread. So the Mishnah says if you eat bread with this salty beef, you don't have to say bracha for the bread because it just accompanies the maliyah. And the Mishnah gives us a rule: whatever is the ikar, whatever is the essence of your meal, this is the ikar, and whatever comes with it is tafel, is secondary, and therefore you only say one bracha for the most important thing. Today there is a whole literature on that. Even silly things like krembo, which is an Israeli dessert with a cookie at the bottom and meringue, soft meringue on top. So some people say you have to say shakol for the meringue and then hamotzi for the biscuit. Some say you have to reverse the order, and then others say no, just say shakol because the main thing here is the meringue and not the basis. But here in the Mishnah we see that it's still the rule in its very initial stage, without getting into details. Finally, Mishnah Het, we read this: Achal te'anim va'anavim v'rimunim, mevarech acharem shalosh brachot, divrei Rabban Gamliel. אחרי אומרים ברכה אחת מהן שלוש, רבי עקיבא אומר אפילו אכל שלק והוא מזונו, מברך אחריו שלוש ברכות. Again, this is a halacha that today is clearly established. We know that the ברכה מהן שלוש, which is an abridged version of Birkat HaMazon that contains three elements. In Birkat HaMazon there are three blessings. Each one of them ends with ברכה, ברוך אתה השם אזן את הכל, ברוך אתה השם על הארץ ועל המזון, ברוך אתה השם בונה ירושלים. All these are folded into one bracha called bracha ben shalosh that we say when? Either when we drink grape juice in a certain amount, or fruits of the 7 species also in a certain amount, or mezonot. When if we had all three of them, then we combine all three of them into one bracha. But here in the Mishnah, this is still not certain. The Mishnah says that if one ate figs, grapes, and pomegranates, you say afterwards 3 blessings, like Birkat HaMazon. That's according to Rabban Gamliel. The Haim Ovadia bracha had meant shalosh. No, for those things we don't say Birkat HaMazon. We just say one abridged version. But it's interesting to know there was one opinion that you had to say for those things the full Birkat HaMazon. Does that mean that anyone who says bracha ben shalosh is missing blessings? No, that's how the rabbis ruled. But we have to know that to understand the origin of bracha ben shalosh, because Rabbi Akiva says afilu achal shelek v'u mezono, even if you ate boiled vegetables and that is your meal, you say birkat hamazon for it. That has an application to the case of someone who has celiac and cannot eat gluten at all. I wrote about it a while ago about one of my students who, when he was in Israel, he was forced by the rabbi of his yeshiva to eat bread, even though it caused him harm. And there was one rabbi, Rabbi Yoel bin Nun of Ofra, who said that ve'achalta v'samata berachta, you say beracha when you're satisfied, and if you're satisfied, you could say the beracha. And people were not happy with that, but it is written in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yaakov Omer, afilu achal shelek v'u mezono, if you ate boiled vegetables, steamed vegetables, and that's for you is the meal, for that you say birkat hamazon. And finally, השותה מים לצמאו, אומר שהכל נהיה בדברו, רבי טרפון אומר, בורא נפשות רבות. If you drink water because you're thirsty, as opposed to drinking water for pleasure, which was not very common at the time, water did not have good reputation with bilharzia and other diseases that people know were carried by water. So they were trying to boil the water. But if you drink water just because you're thirsty, what do you say? Rabbi Tarfon says, and today we took both versions and we say one before, one after. If you recall, in my Yom Kippur email, I had a discussion on the status of water on Yom Kippur, and there's one opinion, very interesting, of Rabbi Moshe Hagiz. Rabbi Moshe Hagiz says that water might not be part of the Inu Nefesh on Yom Kippur, so because water is not something that you enjoy, it's just there to sustain the body. So even though we don't follow the rule of Rabbi Moshe Hagiz literally, but it could serve as an agent for allowance in cases where people really have difficulties on Kippur, maybe they are on the border of medical difficulty. However, the conclusion of those two chapters is that, again, we can see the evolution of halakha, we can see a difference in life in terms of people's knowledge of the Berakhot. They like today, most Orthodox Jews can say the Berakhot by heart. They know exactly what to say when, but that is something that has evolved from the time of the Mishnah. And every detail in the Mishnah has been opened up in things where there are volumes. Just recently, maybe 10, 15 years ago, Rabbi Moshe Levi printed that an encyclopedia, Berakhot Kol Birkat Hashem. There are brachabis. It has become very complicated. This is a good indicator of how halakha evolves. It's good to look at it, and especially the first Mishnah in the second chapter that we did today, which is chapter 6, that speaks about the Berakhot before the food, but does not mention Birkat Mezonot. That will be all for today. Baruch Adonai Olam Amen. And we'll continue with the last 3 chapters of Masechet Berakhot tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem.